All right. Thank you, Shmuel. Perfect. Shkoyach. All right, Shabbos say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin. Begin by thanking all of our sponsors. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Tishrei. Jerry and Sarah will ask you for dedicating over Shemon Drushos this month in the Schus Refuah Shlema for their grandsons Zechariah Dov ben Perel Shira, Shani and Avram Kelman in memory of their beloved parents, and in the Schus of all those who need a Refuah Shlema. Dr. Linda Weinberg in loving memory of her husband Peretz Moshe ben Avram, Leah Sol as a Schus for Refuah Shlema for her daughter Ilana Bas Esther. Our week of learning sponsors Joel Hosner in thanks and in gratitude to the friends of the Israel Defense Forces, as FIDF, who need our support. To thank our Day of Learning sponsors, Avram Zeisman in memory of his mother, Ziva Bas Avram, on the occasion of her yahrzeit. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the neshamos will have an aliyah. All those who need a refuah should have one together with Kol Cholei Yisrael. And of course, we constantly learn and constantly daven in the schus of our precious soldiers, in the schus of Achinu B'nai Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael. Kadosh Baruch Hu should allow our soldiers to be successful in all of their endeavors, and Emeretz Hashem should shield our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisrael from all harm. So with that, let us begin. Today's daf is daf Samich. We are picking up Emeretz Hashem on somewhere way before Daf Samich. Nun Tes Amabez. So we left off, I will say again, we left off Kasha Hilchasa Hilchasa. In the wide lines, it's about 2, 4, 6 lines in. So remember again, we ended off yesterday's daf by saying that the halacha follows Rabbi Yochanan, namely again that asi dibor umevatel dibor. One act of speech could come and negate or upend a previous act of speech. So the Gemara says as follows: Kashi hilchasa hilchasa. The problem is one halacha contradicts another halacha. Amarta hilchasa Rabbi Yochanan. You told us that the halacha follows Rabbi Yochanan. The kaimelon hilchasa Rav Nachman, and the halacha is also like Rav Nachman. Now, what did Rav Nachman said? Di boilehu mash yachzer v'yigaresh bo. So they had asked Rav Nachman. Ultimately, what happens if a husband sends a get with a shaliach and then goes ahead and runs it? We had this case actually yesterday's daf. Then runs after the shaliach, goes ahead and tells the shaliach, I don't want to give the get. Can the husband then decide subsequently to still use that get? And what's that? Rav Nachman Amar Chazar Megarish Bo. Rav Nachman said you can reuse the get. Rav Sheshes Amar Einu Chazar Megarish Bo. Rav Sheshes says you can't reuse the get. The Kaimelon Hilchos Akavasid Rav Nachman, and the halacha follows Rav Nachman. Now I will say, now again, the reason why this seems to be a contradiction is, isn't this a case of asi dibor umevatel dibor? Isn't this a case, shouldn't this be a case of one act of speech negating another act of speech, right? Ruvain told the shaliach, go ahead and deliver the get to my wife. Then Ruvain said, don't deliver the get to my wife. So that's dibor mevatel dibor. And if that's the case, really the get should be voided, right? You shouldn't be able to use the get. Yet the halacha is that you can use the get. So that seems to contradict what you just said before. To which the Gemara says, no. Nihi de batle mitoras shaliach, mitoras get lo batle. Again, remember, when Ruvain runs after the shaliach, what is he doing? He's mevatel the shlichos. He's not mevatel the get. We actually, remember in our Gittin days, we discussed this distinction between being mevatel, negating the shlichus, versus negating the actual document of the get itself. So therefore, again, these two halachas are not contradictory. In fact, again, we are paskin like Rav Nachman, that if Ruvain runs after the shaliach and says, no, I don't want to give the get, and then he decides later on that he wants to give the get, he could reuse the same document. That's fine. But we do paskin like Reish Lakish, like Rabbi Yochanan, namely that asi dibor umevatel dibor. One act of dibor can negate another. So remember again, plugging that into our sugya. What's our sugya? Ruvain gives Rachel money. He says, Hari'at mikudeshas li la'achar shloshim yom. This is your case of Kiddushin. It'll be chal after 30 days. After 30 days. So we'll say, remember again, how do we get into this whole thing? If Rachel decides, and Rachel accepts it, if Rachel decides on day 15 that she doesn't want to marry Ruvain anymore, could she just simply say, no thank you? no thank you, or does she need some type of maisa to go ahead and undo that dibur? So remember again, we end up getting like halacha l'maisa, like Rabbi Yochanan, and therefore she could just simply say no thank you. And once she says no thank you, that is the end of the conversation. That's asi dibur umevatal dibur. Incredible. Incredible. All right, let's go back there. Mikudeshes l'sheni. So I would say, so if you remember again, similarly, the Mishnah spoke about the idea. The Mishnah spoke about the idea that halacha l'maisa, if she goes ahead and, right, so same case as before. Reuven gives Rachel money, says Hariat mikudeshes li after 30 days. Then Shimon comes along within the 30 days and gives her money. What's the halacha? She's mikudeshes to Shimon. Mikudeshes to Shimon. So says the Gemara. Amarav, Mikudeshes Sheni Olam. Rav says she's married to Shimon, that's it. She's married to Shimon, quote unquote, forever. Shmuel says, Mikudeshes L'Sheni Ad Lamid Yom. Shmuel says, no, this is interesting. She's only Mikudeshes to Shimon up until 30 days. Very interesting. After 30 days, Shimon's Kiddushin falls off, and Reuven's Kiddushin comes in. Okay, so the Gemara says, so Rav Chisda said, that doesn't make any sense. Kiddushi sheni b'mai paki. I don't understand what I say. If you're telling me that the Kiddushin to to Shimon works, if that's actually true, the Kiddushin to Shimon works, then how does it, paki also means like it's removed. How is it removed? Amar Rav Yosef, Mar Areisha Masni Lavakashile. So the truth is, there is a machlokas as to how to frame machlokas. Thank you so much. Thank you. So both say there's an interesting machlokas as to how to frame the machlokas. So remember again, here's what we have. We have Machlokes Rav and Shmuel. Rav says she's Mikudeshes to the second guy, we'll call him Shimon, forever. Shmuel says she's Mikudeshes to the second guy up until the Kiddushin of the first guy kicks in. There's Machlokes now as to which case in the Mishnah the Machlokes applies to. Machlokes on the Machlokes. So the Gemara says, listen to this. So the Gemara Amar Rav Yosef, Mar Areisha Masnei V'Kashile. So one opinion frames the machlokes as referring to the Reisha. But remember again, the Reisha is Reuven gives Rachel money. Hariat Mikudeshes Lila Achar Shloshim Yom. So one goes ahead and frames the machlokes on the Reisha, and again, ultimately again. And the problem with framing it on the Reisha is the statement of Shmuel, that I understand that if the Kiddushin of the second guy of Shimon works, how does it just simply fall away after 30 days? So the Gemara says, Rav Yehuda, Seifa Masni Lavalo Kashile. Rav Yehuda, however, again, understands this Machlokes as referring to the Seifa, the end of the Mishnah, and he doesn't have a kasha. Remember again, what was the Seifa? The Seifa was Mi'achshav Vi'ad Shloshim, Mi'achshav Ula Achar Shloshim Yom. So remember again, what was the Seifa case? The case was Reuven gives Rachel money, and he says to her, this Hariat Mikudeshes Li Mi'achshav Ula Achar Shloshim Yom. From now. Now we'll say, what does that little word Mi'achshav do? What does that do? Retroactivity clause. So now watch this. Rav Amar Mikudeshes Ve'ina Mikudeshes Li Olam. So Rav says ultimately again, the second guy could be Mikudeshes, but not Mikudeshes, right, the Olam, which means what? I will say that, technically speaking, during the 30 days, could the Kiddushin of the second guy work? Could it work? It could work. What's the problem? Once the end of the 30 days comes, retroactivity clause is triggered. Once retroactivity clause is triggered, then what happens? Retroactively, the first Kiddushin was Chal, which means that retroactively, at the time that she received the second Kiddushin, she was already married. What's the effect of receiving second Kiddushin once you're already married? What's the effect? Well, it's bad, right? Not good for one Shalom Bayis, right? But Lamaisa doesn't work. Totally inconsequential. Shmuel says, Mikudeshes ve'ina Mikudeshes ela ad lamed yom. Shmuel says ultimately again, she's Mikudeshes, but ultimately again, not in Mikudeshes and only until 30 days. The Achar Lamed Paki Kiddushay Sheni, the Gamre Kiddushay Rishon. Shmuel says, no. When Shimon gives her the Kiddushin, she's Mikudeshes. She's mikudeshes, right? But what? The Kiddushin only lasts up until 30 days. Because once the 30th day comes, then retroactively she's married to guy number 1, and then again Kiddushin number 2 falls away. So the Gemara says, so an interesting idea. So the Rav, misapkale itinahavi ichazarari. Now both say, what is at the core of all of this is the following. What's at the core of all of this is following. When a man says, right, to Rachel, Reuven goes over to Rachel and he says, "Hari at nikudeshasli me'achshav ula'achar shloshim yom." So I will say, if you look at that phrase, it's inherently contradictory, right? Why is it inherently contradictory? Me'achshav means now. La'achar shloshim yom means later. So how do you reconcile that? How do you reconcile that? So I will say, so now listen to this. Rav wasn't sure. So on one hand, you could look at it like a t'nai. Like a t'nai. What's the t'nai? What's the condition? After 30 days, you will be retroactively married to me, right? Retroactively to this point. Or chazara. Or is it a retraction? The way you can read this, the way you can read that statement is, means it's a t'nai, it's a condition. That after 30 days there's a retroactivity clause that is triggered, and ultimately again we'll be married up until this point, or retroactively we're married from this point. Or it's a retraction. Reuven said, it's like, yeah, you know what? I still have a couple of things I'd like to do in my single life, right? So let's actually make it la'achar shloshim yom. Steve, thank you so much. Thank you. I'm sorry. Sorry for the tircha. But no, instead let's make it after 30 days. Let's make it after 30 days. So that's the shaila. Is it a t'nai or is it a retraction? So the Gemara says, "Itinai havi, ichazar havi." The Shmuel pshitale de tina havi. According to Shmuel, ultimately again he sees it that it's pashit, that it's a tinai. Or beplukta dahani tanoi. And I will say this is the machlokes of the following machlokes tanoim. Disanyo mehayom ula achar misa. So we'll say so again. So that's what's driving this. Rav is not sure. At the end of the day, is this a t'nai or is it a chazara? Shmuel sees it pashit that it's a t'nai. So the Gemara says, so the pluta t'nai, the sanyo, me'ayom la'achar misa get ve'eno get. So we'll say we have the parallel machlokes ultimately again by gittin. What happened by gittin? Right? The man says, this is your get from today and after my death. Get ve'eno get. It's a suffix get, according to the Chachamim. Rabbi Omer kazeh get. Rabbi says ultimately again it's a get. So we'll say, what's the machlokes over here? Chachamim aren't sure about this statement. This is your get from today, right, and after I die. So is it a t'nai or is it a retraction? And therefore, again, if it's a t'nai, fine. If it's a retraction, it doesn't work. Why not? Because then when does he want the get to be chal? After he dies. You can't give a posthumous get. So the Chachamim weren't sure. Rebbe says, no, it's a t'nai. It's a t'nai and it's totally fine. So the Gemara says, I don't understand. So if that's the case, v'neima Rav halacha ki Rabbanon, v'neima Shmuel halacha ki Rebbe. So why doesn't Rav just simply say that halacha is like the Rabbanon by the case of Gittin, and just let Rebbe say that halacha is like, just let Shmuel say that halacha is like Rebbe? To which the Gemara says, no, tzricha. You need both cases. Why? Di'ilu amar Rav halacha ki Rabbanon. If Rav would have just said halacha is Rabbanon, hava amina hasam dilnachoka ka'asi. By get, ultimately again, that's where he espouses his position, because there he's trying to distance his wife, so to speak. But over here by Kiddushin, maybe he would agree with Shmuel that it's a Tanai. The Amr Shmuel halacha karebi, and Shmuel would say halacha like Rebbe, hava amina hasam hu de'in get. It's only in that case where it's not a get. Why? But here there's nothing wrong with framing Kiddushin to take effect after 30 days. He should agree with Rav. Therefore you need both independent cases. So therefore, what we are left with is a fundamental machlokes, Rav and Shmuel. Essentially, whenever you make one of these statements, right? Hariat mekudesh asli me'achshav ula achar shloshim yom. Right? Harei ze gitech mehayom ula achar misa. How do you understand these phrases? Are they a t'nai? So Shmuel understands it's a condition. It's triggering retroactivity clause. But Rav is saying, Rav is saying, I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure. Maybe it's a retraction. Maybe he originally wanted the transaction to take effect now, and then he changed his mind and he wants it to take effect later. So again, according to Rav, all of these cases are going to be safek. According to Shmuel, all of these cases are bona fide to know. Incredible. So according to Rav's logic, so now watch this. So according to Rav, right? So Rav is not sure ultimately again in these cases, is it a t'nai or is it a retraction? So now Abai says like this. According to Rav, who's not sure, listen to the following case. Reuven comes along and says to Rachel, gives her money, this is your kesef kiddushin from now and after 30 days. Okay, watch this. But say it's not over. Shimon comes along, so Shimon comes along and says, this is your kiddushin now, from now and after 20 days. It gets better, top of Samich. Levi, right? It's a party. Levi comes along and says, this is your kiddushin from now and after 10 days. So we'll say, what's the halacha? So she's going to need a get from Ruvain and from Levi. But she's not going to need a get ultimately again from Shimon. Why not? If it's a t'nai, so ultimately again the kama kiddushay, the hanach lav kiddushay. I understand. Let me understand this. If you hold that these type of statements are a t'nai, then ultimately again the first one affected kiddushin. The first one affected kiddushin. The kame kiddushay, the hanach lav kiddushay. Then the rest are not kiddushin. Ichazora havi. If it's a retraction, then the basra kiddushin, then the last guy's kiddushin is an effective kiddushin. The hanach lav kiddushin, because the last guy, remember again, the last guy is the shortest duration, right? He's the guy who's affecting kiddushin ultimately within 10 days. So we'll say, so therefore again, if that's the case, right, if it's a retraction, the basra kiddushi, the hanach lav kiddushi, ultimately again, then the last guy, we called him Levi, the last guy's kiddushin should be good, the rest should not be good. So why would she require a get from 1 and 3? To which the Gemara says, Ma'udatema, Hai Lishna, Mashma Tana, Umashma Chazara, Biti Bay Gita Mikol Chad V'Chad. I would have thought, Rabbi say that what? Maybe the Lashon is both a T'nai as well as a chazara, and ultimately again, and I shouldn't say so. In other words, it has both connotations, and therefore, just to be on the safe side, we should require a get from all three of the parties. Kamash Mala, not so. Okay, Ula Am Rabbi Yochanan, Afilu Mea Tov Simba. They will say Ula says in Rabbi Yochanan, it's not true. Even if this happened 100 times, in other words, this scenario that we just mentioned before, even if it literally happened 100 times, ultimately, again, Kiddushin would work. Now, we'll say, now obviously, when we say Kiddushin would work, what that would mean is we would require a get from each of these individuals. I'll explain to you Rabbi Yochanan's logic. It's actually very interesting. Shavu nafshei kishraga delivni. These men who have been mekadesh her, they've arranged themselves like a row of bricks. What's the pshat of the row of bricks? The cholchad v'chad ravcha l'charei masar. Both say it's fascinating. You could see this if you walk outside of davening and look at our new mikdash ma'at. They're putting up the block by the front of the building. So I'll say when you put up bricks, when you put up block, you don't put up block like one right next to the other. There's space. There's space. Now that space ultimately is where the mortar, I guess it's mortar, right? Where the mortar goes, that holds everything together. So the Gemara says these guys who are being mekadesh, this same woman, but with different durations, they're like rows of bricks where there's room, there's a little bit of room in between each brick. Now the metaphor is, there's a little bit of room for the next guy's kiddushin to go ahead and somehow take effect in some way. So Shavik, I'll say it's also just an incredible metaphor for Achdus. You can learn a lot. I don't know. Because this is happening right outside of my window of my office. I learn a lot. There's like a lot of daily musar that I see from the building. This notion of the block is fascinating. I would say when you look at the block, you look at the finished product. So ultimately, everything is together, right? There's a profound Achdus in the blocks, right? If one of the blocks decides he doesn't want to be a block, he wants to be a beam, he wants to be, so the whole thing falls apart. It's uniform, it's there. I will say, but how do you achieve Achdus? every brick has to give the other one a little bit of room. You see, if the bricks are on top of each other, right, the bricks are on top of each other, then ultimately, again, there's no room for the mortar, there's no cohesion. If the bricks give each other, the blocks, give each other a little bit of room, then suddenly, again, everything comes together to be a beautiful edifice. What does it mean to give each other a little bit room in the context of Klal Yisrael? I will say, sometimes we're so exacting of each other, right? Someone doesn't do exactly what I want them to do, how I do it, when I want them to do it. It doesn't say, and this happens in marriage, it doesn't say exactly what I want them to do, how I want them to say it. We get so upset, and we get so angry, and we get so resentful. If you want to build a beautiful edifice of Achdus, one brick has to give the other brick a little bit of space. There's got to be a little bit of space, a little bit of breathing space. None of us are perfect. By definition, we go ahead and we make mistakes, and we do things we're not supposed to do, say things we're not supposed to say. If we just give each other the little bit of space, right, in between bricks, then we could come together to build a beautiful edifice. So the Gemara says as follows: Masiv Rav Chanina, Mehayom la'achar misa. Ultimately, again, if he says from today, right, this is the get. This is back to the get case, right? So Reuven gives Rachel a get. He says, this is your get from today until after I die, or ula achar misa, and when I die. So what's halacha? Get ve'eno get. Rabbi say it's a suffix get. Safek get. Now I both say, now this is in line with the position of Rav, right? Why? Because we don't know, what is he saying? What is he saying? Is that a Tanai or is it a retraction? So the Gemara says Bishlama. See, here it is Bishlama. So what's that? I'll get ve'eno get ve'imeis. Therefore, if Ruvain died, Cholet says v'lo misyavemes. Ultimately, again, Rachel has to do chalitza, and doesn't do yibum. So Bishlama l'Rav Misayele. So this makes perfect sense according to Rav, right? Rabbi will say why? Because the whole position of Rav is that halacha l'maisa. We don't know, is such a statement a Tanai or is it a retraction? The Shmuel nami hammani rabbanani. Well, according to Shmuel, whose opinion is it? It's the Rabbanan. Va'anan da'amri karebi. So we'll say, the Shmuel will say, okay, look. We'll say, this is also, we've mentioned this many times. So we'll say, the Gemara was raising this as a kasha on Shmuel. Because according to Rav, this makes perfect sense. Rav is not sure, is it a Tanai or is it a retraction? Therefore, again, halacha l'maisa, it's a safek get, and if Ruvain dies, ultimately she's going to have to do chalitza, no yibum. So the Gemara brings this up, as obviously works with the position of Rav, but it's a kasha on Shmuel. Shmuel says, it's not a kasha on me. Why is it a kasha on me? It reflects a different opinion. I would say sometimes the greatest thing in life is when one could acknowledge that differing opinions exist. That's it. Shmuel says it's only a kasha if you think, right, that every single brayso has to reflect my opinion. But I acknowledge the fact that there are differing opinions in the world. So since this is the Rabbanon, and therefore again it's not a steer to me. Incredible. So the Gemara says, but according to Rabbi Yochanan, who holds also that in these kind of cases where there's, let's say, repeated gittin or repeated kiddushin, ultimately, again, where each person leaves a little bit of space for the next, that doesn't work by gittin. We'll say any get which leaves intact some vestige of marriage is not a get. Right? Again, this is like gittin 101. What does a get do? A get is a davar hakores beino lebeino. It is saying that absolutely, wholly, and unequivocally severs marital bonds. If it doesn't do that, then it's not a get. So how would this even be a safek get? To which the Gemara says, v'lo klomu, yivu miyavim. And therefore, in the case where he gave this kind of get, halacha l'maisa, not only should she should be able to do yibum if she wants to. Amarava, no. Get lahotzi and misa lahotzi. Both a get and death accomplish the same thing. They both extract the woman from marriage. Mashashir get, kamarasa misa. Whatever the get left over, death finished up. Amalei abayik. How can you compare that? Mi dami. Get motzia mirshos yavam, misa machnisa l'shos yavam. On one hand, I will say a get removes her from the domain of Yavam. Obviously, after giving a get, there is no longer any kind of yibum. But ultimately, again, misa, death, enters her into the Rosh Hashanah. Amrabai Hasam Taimamai. What's the reason over there? Gezerah Mishubai Bagin. In other words, why is it that ultimately? In other words, why is it that in the case of Mehayom Ula Achar Misa, it's a safek get? In other words, I will say what the Gemara is essentially saying is, there really shouldn't be such a thing as a safek get, because any get that leaves intact some vestige of marriage is not a get. So what's going on over here? To which the Gemara says, Gzeira mishum mehayom imasi hareze get. Rabbi say, what we are concerned about is the case of mehayom imasi. From today, if I die, Rabbi say, mehayom imasi is a valid get. Is a valid get. So we're concerned that is different ultimately again than mehayom ula achar misa. So that case works. So we're concerned that if we say that in the case of mehayom ula achar misa, it's for sure not a get, one will come to confuse that with the case of mehayom imasi. So the Gemara says, v'nigzar mehayom imasi detachlos, atu mehayom ula achar misa. So why don't you go there, therefore in the case of mehayom imasi, that you should have to do chalitza, lest you come to confuse it ultimately again with mihayom ula achar misa. First white line of say im ata omer choletzes misyavemes. The Gemara says hachanami im ata omer choletzes misyavemes, because we're concerned. We'll say, remember again, chalitza yibum are two sides of the same coin. So we're concerned that ultimately again, if we mandate chalitza, she could also think that she could do yibum. I say the same thing over here, that Allah l'maisa, if she thinks that if you tell her to do chalitza, she thinks she could do yibum. To which the Gemara says, who cares? Tisyabe, let her do yibum. Ve'im bekach klum. I'm not concerned about that because chashasha d'Rabbanan. It's only an issue mid-Rabbanan. So we'll say, so bottom line, okay. So now this is the end of the sugya. So we'll say, so this is a yisodistic idea that we have to analyze here just for a couple of moments. So here's what we have, just to kind of rack up the halachas that we've seen. So halacha number one that's very important, Rabbi say, is that we paskin ultimately again like Rabbi Yochanan, that asi dibor umevatal dibor, right? One act of speech can negate the previous act of speech, which is why in the case that is this, right in the Reisha of the Mishnah, Ruvain comes over to Rachel, gives her money. Hariat mikudeshes li la'achar shloshim yom. Kiddushin will be after 30 days. Day 15, she decides she doesn't want it. What's the halacha? She could simply walk away. And absolutely no problem. Now, Rabbi say, our challenging case is what happens in the case of Hariat mikudeshes li me'achshav ula achar shloshim yom, right? This is your get from now and after 30 days. So Rabbi say, so here is where we had now. So again, if nothing happens and 30 days go by, so she's married. The shaila that comes up is what happens if she accepts Kiddushin from another man during those 30 days. So Rabbi say, so this is machlokes Rav and Shmuel, and what this has to do with is me'achshav ula achar shloshim yom. Is that a t'nai or is that a retraction? So Rabbi says, so now listen to this. So the Rambam writes as follows. The Rambam says, Hariat nikudesh asli me'achshav ula achar shloshim yom b'dinar zeh, uba achar v'kitsha b'soch shloshim yom, hare mikudeshes misafek l'shneihem. So Rabbi say, this is Rambam Hilchos Yishros Parak Zayin Alocha Yud Beis. So ultimately, Rabbi say, the Rambam really paskins like Rav. That we're not sure. It's a safek. Is the statement ultimately again, is it a t'nai or is it a retraction? So the Rambam says it's a safek. Therefore what? Lefichach shneihem nosnim get bein besoch shloshim bein la'achar shloshim yom. So both say, therefore the Rambam paskins that halacha l'maisa, in this case of me'achshav, if a second person comes along and gives her kiddushin during the 30 days, who is she married to? Is she married to guy number one because of a retroactivity clause? Is she married to guy number two because it wasn't a retroactivity clause, it was a retraction? So therefore it's a suffix. Because it's a suffix, she's going to require a get ultimately again from both individuals. So halacha l'maisa, the Rambam paskins like Rav. Incredible. Incredible. So both say, so we paskin again. So essentially, the takeaways are we paskin like Rabbi Yochanan that asi dibor umevatal dibor, and we paskin like Rav that me'achshav ula achar shloshim yom. We don't know what to do with that statement. Is that a t'nai or is it a retraction? It's a suffix, and therefore again, if another man does in fact give her kiddushin during those days, during those 30 days, we would require a get from both individuals. Okay, incredible. Mishnah. Ha'omer le'isharei at mikudeshes le'amanashe etein lach masayim zuz. There's some more cases of Tanaim. So a man says to a woman, Reuven goes over to Rachel, this is your get on the condition that I give you 200 zuz. So Harezim Mikudeshes Vuyitein. Okay, so that's fine. She's Mikudeshes and he has to give her money. Let's give her money. So if he says, this is your Kiddushin on the condition that I give you the get from now until 30 days, what's the halacha? Nasan la b'sok shlosh yom Mikudeshes. Or I will say, so this is a classic Tanai. If he gives her the money within 30 days, then she's Mikudeshes. Ve'em lav, ain't Mikudeshes. Ultimately, we'll say, so again, I want to be clear, there's no retroactivity clause over here, right? This is, he's just simply saying, if I give you money within the next 30 days, you're Mikudeshes, and if not, you're not Mikudeshes. He doesn't have to say if not, but you're not Mikudeshes. So it's fine. If he gives her the money in 30 days, she's married. If he doesn't give her the money within 30 days, she's not married. Simple cases. Amanas, sheyesh li masayim zuz. Let's say he says, you become Mikudeshes on the condition that I have 200 zuz, harezim Mikudeshes v'yesh lo. Fine. So if he, again, I will say straightforward cases. If he has 200 zuz, so she's mikudeshes. Doesn't have 200 zuz, she's not mikudeshes. Amanas she'erech masayim zuz. Let's say he says to her, "Become married. You're married to me on the condition that I show you 200 zuz." What's the halacha? Harezu mikudeshes v'ira'ala. She's mikudeshes, assuming that what he shows her the money. Show me the money. V'im hira ala shulchan ena mikudeshes. It's very interesting. If he's a money changer, right, the shulchani, and he shows her ultimately again 200 zuz on the table, then ultimately she's not mikudeshes. Why not, Rabbi? Because bepashtos, or possibly, it's not his. In other words, when he says becoming Kodesh on the condition that I show you 200 zuz, what's understood in that statement is I'm going to show you who's 200 zuz? My 200 zuz. In other words, we'll say, if he works in a bank, and takes her to the vault and says, look at all these zuzim over here, so obviously that's not going to work because Lamaisa, that's not his. Good. So let's go back to Itmar. So I'll say, now let's focus on this for just a moment. First case, Reuven goes over to Rachel, says, right, you are married to me on the condition that I give you 200 zuz. So we'll say, by the way, I know everyone understands it, but I'm just going to mention it. Of course, obviously all of these cases only work if the woman consents to it, right? I know it sounds strange, right? It sounds like the guy's going over to, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to take charge kind of guy, right? Here's the deal, right? Here's the money, and then we're married. It's like, so obviously I will say it's understood. Kiddushin doesn't happen without the consent of the woman. We're just focusing on this from the man's transactional perspective, Right? So we'll say, so again, so what happens? So we'll say, so now Reuven goes over to Rachel. He says, become Mikudeshes on the condition that I give you 200 zuz. Okay, so we'll say, so now there's machlokes on the mechanics. Itmar, Rav Huna Amar, V'hu Yitain. Rav Huna says, fine. The halacha is, when he gives her the money, the Kiddushin is retroactively chal to the time that they entered into this marriage. So in other words, if he goes over to her on Thursday, right, and says, right, we're married on the Kiddushin, I give you 200 zuz, and he gives her the money on Sunday. He gives her the money on Sunday. Rav Huna says, no problem. When he gives the money on Sunday, retroactively they're married to Thursday. Right, fine. Rav Huna says, no. There's no retroactivity over here. When are they married? When he gives her the money. So on Sunday, when he gives her the money at the end of the day, they'll be married as of Sunday. Rav Huna Amar V'hu Yitain Tina Havi Mekayim. Rav Huna Amar V'hu Yitain Tina Havi Mekayim Tina V'Azil. So ultimately, Rav Huna says it's a Tanai. It's a Tanai, right? That here's what he's saying. It become Mikudeshes. Essentially, what he's saying is become Mikudeshes to me. Parentheses. As of now, when I give you the money. So whenever he gives her the money, ultimately the Kiddushin is retroactively chal. Rav Yehuda Amar L'chishe Yitain L'chiyav Havi Kiddushay Hashta Mihu Lo Havi Kiddushay. Rav Yehuda says there's no Tanai, right? There's no Tanai, or there's a condition, but there's not a Tanai. In other words, I should say it differently. There's a condition, there's no retroactivity. There's retroactivity. So therefore, whenever he gives her the money, they'll be married from that moment going forward. So what's the practical difference between these two opinions? So interesting, the Gemara feels it's obvious. Well, so there's a big nafkamina. A nafkamina, she meets a wonderful guy on Friday named Shimon. Right? It's love at first sight. She accepts Kiddushin from him. Only one little issue. She never told Ruvain. Ruvain gives her the money on Sunday. So I'll say, so according to Rav Huna, now the Kiddushin of Shimon is void, right? Because ultimately, again, the Kiddushin of Ruvain is retroactive. According to Rav Yehuda, no, that's it. Ruvain lost his chance, and the Kiddushin to Shimon is good. To which the Gemara says, Utinan nabi gabi Gittin. We see the same concept by Gittin. What happened by Gittin? Ki agavna. Homer li'isharei zegitech amna shetitn li'masayim zos. I will say this is the reverse case. Right? In this case, Reuven says to Rachel, this is your get on the condition you give me 200 zuz. So Rabbi says, so right, in other words, essentially what Reuven is doing over here is demanding money for the get, which of course is unequivocally wrong, morally reprehensible, and should never be done. But nevertheless, he's doing it. So ultimately, again, he's saying, this is your get on the condition you give me 200 zuz. Hareza migurashes v'hititain. Ultimately, again, Rabbi say, so what's the halacha? She's migurashes and she owes him the money. So what's the shayla, Rabbi say? What's the shayla? When is she migureshes as of? So Rav Huna Amar V'hu V'hititin. Rav Huna says when she gives the money, the get is retroactively chal. Ultimately, again, to the moment he gave it to her. Rav Yehuda said no. The chishatite, no. There's no retroactivity over here. When she gives the money, then she is divorced. So the Gemara says Rav Huna Amar V'hititin Havi Tina. So V'hititin Tina Havi Mekaymet Tina V'azla. Rav Huna says it's a Tanai, and therefore the Tanai triggers retroactivity. Rav Yehuda Amar the chishatite Yavi le havigita hashtamia lo haviget. So what was I say machlokes? So the old Gemara is pointing out over here is what I say the same machlokes Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda that applies by Kiddushin applies by Gittin. This is the same fundamental machlokes, which is when you go ahead and you attach this is your Kiddushin on right when I give you money, or this is your get when I receive money. So I will say, so again, Rav Yehuda will say there's a retroactivity clause that is built into this, and therefore as soon as the money is given, the get or Kiddushin is retroactively chal to the moment that it was given. That's Rav Huna. Rav Yehuda says there's no retroactivity over here. Either the Kiddushin or the Gittin is chal when the actual money is given. So the Gemara says I'm a base my benau, but it says 60 be my benau. But what's the practical difference in these two opinions by Gittin? Ikabenayu sheniskara haget. Well, very interesting. Let's say Reuven gives Rachel the get on Thursday, right? And here's the condition: this is your get when you Rachel give me Reuven 200 zuz. Fine. So now what happens? On Friday, the get is destroyed. Sunday, she gives him the money. So Rabbi says, listen to this. Rav Huna have a get. According to Rav Huna, when she gives him the money on Sunday, the get is valid. Why? Because according to Rav Huna, there's a retroactivity clause that's triggered. Rav Yehuda lo have a get. According to Rav Yehuda, ultimately there's no retroactivity. And therefore, again, when is the get chal? When she gives the money. When did she give the money? On Sunday. What was the status of the get on Sunday? Destroyed. There's no get to talk of, and therefore, again, she is not divorced. So Rabbi says, so therefore, same machlokes, Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda, both by Gittin as well as by Kiddushin. Rabbi say, and again, it's the same fundamental. Essentially, we're going to what's the machlokes? The machlokes is, does a Tanai come with an inherent retroactivity clause or not? That's really the machlokes. Rav Huna essentially says every Tanai comes with a built-in retroactivity clause. Rav Yehuda says no, it doesn't. The only thing ultimately, you know what creates retroactivity clause? According to Rav Yehuda, we'll say what creates retroactivity clause? One word. What's the one word? Me'achshav. Retroactivity clause, you can do it, but it's got to be explicitly built in. So the Gemara says, now the obvious question I will say is, why do I need two cases over here? If it indeed is the same machlokes, why do I need the same machlokes stated both by Gittin and by Kiddushin? I'll tell you why. You need both. If we would have just said the machlokes by Kiddushin, that's the case where Rav Huna says that there's a retroactivity clause. Why? Mishum de krova kasi. Because we'll say it makes sense. He wants to marry this woman, so it makes sense to create the chalos, the halachic actualization of the Kiddushin as early as possible. Aval gerushin de l'rechoka kasi ema model Rav Yehuda. But by gerushin, ultimately, again, what's his intention? To push her away. Maybe even Rav Huna agrees that we delay that as long as possible. And who had just said the Gerushin case, that's the case Rabbi Yehuda ultimately says his position. Why? Because a man is not embarrassed to ask a woman for money. But I will say by Kiddushin, where she may be a bit more reticent to ask him for money, perhaps Rav Huna agrees with Rav Yehuda, therefore tzricha, therefore in both cases. Fine, Rabbi say, but bottom line, it is the same machlokes by both cases. When a t'nai is made, hari'at mekudesh li, when I give you 200 zuz, right? Or hari'at meguresh li, when you give me 200 zuz. So Rav Huna telling us that Allah Ma'isa, when the money is given by the Kiddushin case from man to woman, by Gerushin case from woman to man, the Kiddushin and the Gerushin retroactively chal to the moment that the transaction occurred. Rabbi Yehuda is saying absolutely not. Both Kiddushin as well as Gerushin only chal from the moment the money was given and going forward. So listen to this. Reuven says to Rachel, this is your get on the condition that you give me 200 zuz. So what's the halacha? Afa pishin is kara haget o sha'avad, even if the get, both say, was torn or was destroyed, hare zu migureshes. Ultimately, again, she's divorced. La'achar tinase, but she shouldn't really get remarried. Ad shetitain va'od, until she gets another get. In other words, both say. So here's what's interesting. So just to clarify the case, right? Reuven gives Rachel a get on Thursday. He says, "This is your get on the condition that you give me 200 zuz." So both say, "So what's the halacha?" Even though, again, now the assumption over here, she hasn't yet given the money. Now what happened? The get was destroyed. On Friday, the get was destroyed. So what does the Brisa say? She is divorced. She's divorced, ultimately again, but she really should get another get before she gets married. Because remember again, the get is her proof of divorce. So getting remarried with that proof of divorce is a serious roll of the dice, a serious danger. So I'll say, so again, this seems to support the position of Rav Huna that there's a retroactivity clause that's built in. Furthermore, we learned, Reuven says to Rachel, this is your get on the condition you give me 200 zuz, umes. And now Reuven died, right? So both say, so Nasna, if she had paid him the money before he died, ein zakuk liyavam. Ultimately, there's no yibum, right? Lo Nasna, what if she didn't give the money? Zakuk liyavam. Ultimately, again, then Rabbi says she's subject to yibum. Rabbi Shmuel says, no senes la'achav, o la'aviv, o la'acham min akrovim. Very true. Rabbi Shmuel says, even after Reuven died, she can give it to one of his relatives, and that satisfies the Tanai. Now I will say, ad kan lo pligi ela demar savar li velo liyarshai or liyarshi umar savar afil liyarshi. And I will say the machlokes is when the man makes this Tanai, when Reuven makes this Tanai, is he saying this money is payable only to me and not to my inheritors, or no? Technically, the money is payable even to my inheritors. However, to kuli alma mia Tanai hava. But I will say what comes clear over here. I will say is the clear thing from these brisas is that there is a Tanai with a retroactivity clause that is built into this, right? I should say differently. This is a Tanai with a built-in retroactivity clause. I will say, who does that support? That supports Rav Huna. That's Rav Huna's position. Utiyufta Rabbi Yehuda, and it seems to refute the position of Rabbi Yehuda. Also remembering, as Rabbi Yehuda is always of the position that when ultimately again is the transaction valid, when the money is tendered. Only when the money is tendered is so supposed to say all of these brises reflect that no, that's not true. That the actual transaction is valid ultimately retroactively. Rabbi Yehuda will say no. How money? He will say whose opinion is reflected in these brises. Rabbi he Dam Rav Huna Rabbi Kala Omer Amanas Ke Omer Me'achshav Dami Opliga Rabbanon Alei Vanan Dami Rabbanon. So I will say here it is. This is at the core of this machlokes. I will say the machlokes Rav Huna and Rabbi Yehuda is really a machlokes Rabbi and the Rabbanon, which is whenever you go ahead and you say Amanas. Whenever you make a condition, does a condition come with a built-in retroactivity clause? Rebbe says yes. Kala omer al menas, whenever you say on the condition, ki omer me'achshav. Every condition by definition comes with a built-in retroactivity clause. The Rabbanan disagree. The Rabbanan don't disagree that you could build in a retroactivity clause. But rather, what do they hold? They hold that what? you have to articulate it. You have to say me'achshav. In other words, when you say on the condition does not automatically mean from now. Doesn't automatically build an Shabbos say, that's it. At the core of all of this, Shabbos say, is when Reuven says to Rachel, this is your get or this is your Kiddushin, on the condition that I give you or you give me 200 zuz. Shabbos say, do we understand that he's saying that the Kiddushin, the get, should be chal as of now? Or not, or when the money is given. So ultimately, again, Rabbi Yehuda will hold like the Rabbanon, that no, anytime you make a condition, there's not an automatically implied retroactivity clause. Whereas Rav Huna holds like Rebbe, who says, yes, there is. Incredible, that's the machlokas. Gufa, so I'll say, let's analyze a little bit more. Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rebbe, Kolo Omer Amanas Kar Me'achshav Dami. So I'll say, so again, Rebbe holds that whenever you say amanas on the condition always comes with a built-in retroactivity clause. Amar Rabbi Zera, ki avina beBavel, when I was in Bavel, hava aminan hada amar Rav Huna amar Rebbe, kol amar amanas kol achshav dami. So pligi rabbanan alei. So we'll say when I was in Bavel. So again, the gears, so the understanding we had was Rebbe holds kol omer almanas is komer me'achshav. Whenever you say on the condition comes with a built-in retroactivity clause, and the Rabbanim disagree. Ki salki lahasam, but yet when I went to Eretz Yisrael, ashke chel Rav Asi di Yosef v'kamlim shedi Rabbi Yochanan, I heard Rav Asi sing over the name of Rabbi Yochanan, hakom odim ba'omer almanas komer achshav dami. Everyone agrees that when you say almanas, it's as if it's like achshav from now. It's a built-in retroactivity clause. So what's the machlokes? Lo nechleku ela mehayom ula achar misa. There's only a very specific machlokes regarding the verbiage of mehayom, from today, ela achar misa, and after I die. And I both say that's a gittin case, right? That's a gittin case. Reuven gives Rachel a get. And he says to her, "This is your get from today and after my death." So we'll say, we just spoke about this before. Vatanya, we learned Mayom Achar Misa get ve'ino get Recham. Rabbi Omer Kazah get. But we'll say, but we just said before that exact case, Mehayom Ula Achar Misa. And I both say the reason why is this? So what's the halacha? If Reuven gives Rachel a get and he says to her, "This is your get from today and after my death." So we'll say, so remember again, the Chachamim say Safek get. Safek get. Why is it Safek get? I will say, why is it Safek get? Because we don't know what he's saying. Again, is it a t'nai or is it a retraction? Right? Ultimately, again, is he saying it's the get from today, and when I die, it's triggered as of today? Or ultimately, again, is he trying to give a pastumus get, which obviously doesn't work? Rebbe says, no, this is a get. It's a t'nai. So the Gemara says, Ul Rav Yehuda, so now watch this. So just to understand what's happening over here. So Rabbi Zera says, in Bavel, so the way we understood the Machlokes Rebbe and the Rabbanon was that in any case of Almanas, that was the Machlokes Rebbe and the Rabbanon. In any case of Almanas, Rebbe holds Almanas has a built-in retroactivity clause. The Rabbanon disagree. When I came to Eretz Yisrael, so the way they were learning in the base medrash is, no, there's no Machlokes. Everyone agrees that Almanas on the condition comes with a built-in retroactivity clause. So what's the Machlokes? The Machlokes was in a specific case of gittin of mehayom ula'achar misa. That was the machlokes case. Rebbe holds that's a t'nai. The Rabbanon held we don't know what that is. That is contradictory lashon. We don't know. Maybe it's a t'nai or maybe it's a retraction. Therefore, it'll have to be a safek get. According to Rabbi Yehuda, who said that they argue on Almanas, so the Gemara says, niflog ba'almanas. So if that's the case, again, instead of arguing on the case of Meyom La'achar Misa, let them argue on Almanas as well. Lo diacha kochol de Rebbe. It's coming to tell you the koach of Rebbe. Nami harezeget. Rabbi said, because again, coming to highlight the power of Rebbe's position, namely that halacha l'maisa, even in the case of mehayom la'achar misa, it still works. According to Rebbe, I have a niflagi ba'almanas. So why don't you go ahead and argue in almanas? Lo diacha kochad rabbanon, and show me the power of the rabbanon's position. That even in the case of almanas, ultimately again the rabbanon still argue and say again that it doesn't work. It's not a retroactivity clause. Koach zeh adif. But in general, whenever we have the ability to illustrate the power of permissiveness, right? The koach teira, that's what we would rather do. So therefore, I will say, what we are left with over here what we are left with over here is a fundamental machlokes. It's both Rabbi and the Rabbanon and Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda. And it's a fundamental machlokes. What is a fundamental machlokes? When you say almanas on the condition, does almanas come with an implied retroactivity clause? So you've got Rabbi and Rav Huna saying yes, Rav Yehuda and the Rabbanon saying no. Now we have another machlokes and that machlokes. Apparently, that's the way they understood the machlokes in Bavel. In Eretz Yisrael, they understood that wasn't even a machlokas. Everyone agrees that halacha l'maisa, al-minas comes with a built-in retroactivity clause. What was the machlokas, Rabbi and the Rabbanon? Only in one very specific case. What specific case? In the Gittin case of mehayom ula'achar misa. Rebbe says retroactivity clause. The Rabbanan say we don't know what to do with that. Is that a retroactivity clause or is that retraction? Not exactly sure about that. So we'll stop over here for today. Okay, we made good headway today. We'll stop here for today. So tomorrow we'll finish up the rest of the sugya, and Emir Hashem will also do the halacha l'maisa in the machlokes Rebbe, Rabbanan, Rav Huna, and Rav Yehuda. We'll say shkoyach. All right, Chaver on Zoom. Have a good day, everyone. To the Chaver in Eretz Yisrael, please know that we are with you. Eretz Hashem, you and your family should just be safe.